Throughout history, the ultimate symbol of power and security wasn't a crown or a throne. It was a wall. Fortified cities, from the mud-brick ramparts of Mesopotamia to the stone behemoths of Rome, stood as defiant declarations of strength. But for every wall built, there was someone determined to tear it down. These were the siege masters of antiquity, the brilliant and often brutal engineers who turned the art of destruction into a science. Their legacy isn't just in ruins and rubble. It's in the revolutionary weapons and audacious tactics that reshaped the ancient world. Today, we're marching into the heart of ancient warfare to uncover the genius behind the greatest sieges in history. Before the age of cannons and gunpowder, taking a fortified city was one of the most difficult challenges a commander could face. A direct assault was often a death sentence for the attackers. So, armies had to get creative. The earliest siege tactics were simple but grueling. Starvation was the most common weapon. An army would surround a city, cut off its food and water supply, and simply wait. This could take months, even years. Another early method was using ramps. Attackers would build massive earthen ramps, sometimes over incredible distances, to allow their soldiers to simply walk over the city walls. The famous siege of Masada by the Romans is a prime example of this relentless brute force engineering. But as defenses grew more sophisticated, so did the tools of attack. The Assyrian Empire, which dominated the Near East from the 9th to the 7th century BC, is often called the first great siege power. They didn't just wait outside the walls, they brought the fight to them. The Assyrians developed a terrifying arsenal of siege engines. They pioneered the use of the battering ram, a massive heavy log, often tipped with metal, suspended in a mobile wooden frame. Protected by leather hides to prevent them from being set on fire, teams of men would swing the ram relentlessly against a single point in a wall or gate until it shattered. Alongside these rams, the Assyrians deployed something even more fearsome, the siege tower. These were multi-story wooden structures on wheels, essentially mobile castles. Archers could shoot down on the defenders from the top, while the base might contain a battering ram. A drawbridge at the top level could be lowered onto the enemy wall, allowing Assyrian shock troops to pour directly into the city. The psychological impact of seeing these wooden monsters rolling towards your home must have been absolutely devastating. Assyrian art is filled with graphic depictions of their sieges, a clear message to anyone who dared to defy them. They were masters of psychological warfare, often flaying captured leaders and displaying their bodies to terrorize cities into submission. As we move into the Greek world, the science of siegecraft, or polyarchetica, took a quantum leap forward. This was the age of Hellenistic ingenuity, where mathematics and engineering combined to create weapons of unprecedented power and precision. The undisputed masters of this era were Philip II of Macedon and his son, Alexander the Great. They didn't just conquer, they systematically dismantled any city that stood in their way. Their secret weapon was the torsion-powered catapult. Unlike earlier tension-based weapons like a simple bow, torsion engines used the immense power stored in tightly wound ropes of animal sinew or hair. This allowed them to launch heavy stones with incredible force, capable of shattering stone battlements from a safe distance. The two main types were the ballista, which fired large bolts or arrows, and the onager, or stone thrower. Philip's engineers perfected these machines, calculating trajectories and calibrating power to create a true artillery corps. When Alexander besieged the island fortress of Tyre in 332 BC, he faced what seemed like an impossible task. The city was half a mile offshore. Undeterred, Alexander ordered his men to build a massive causeway, or mole, all the way to the island, under constant attack from the Tyrian navy. As the mole neared the city, he brought up his siege towers, some reportedly over 150 feet tall, and an armada of catapults on ships. He systematically battered the walls until a breach was made, and the city that had once felt untouchable fell in a storm of violence. Another legendary figure from this period was Demetrius I of Macedon, who earned the nickname Poliorcetes, the besieger of cities. His siege of Rhodes in 305 BC became the stuff of legend. Demetrius brought an arsenal that dwarfed even Alexander's. His masterpiece was a colossal siege tower named Helepolis, or Taker of Cities. This was a 9-story iron-plated behemoth on wheels, standing nearly 130 feet high and weighing an estimated 160 tons. It was armed with catapults on every level and required over 3,000 men to move it. The Rhodians, however, proved to be equally ingenious. They flooded the ground in front of the Helepolis, miring it in mud. They fought back with their own fire arrows and catapults, and after a year-long struggle, Demetrius, having exhausted his resources, was forced to abandon the siege. The Rhodians, in celebration, melted down the bronze from his abandoned siege engines and used it to construct a massive statue to their sun god, Helios. We know it today as the Colossus of Rhodes, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, born from the failure of the greatest siege engine ever built. Then came the Romans. If the Greeks were the innovators, the Romans were the masters of standardization, logistics, and ruthless efficiency. The Roman legion was a self-contained engineering corps. Every legionary carried not just a sword and shield, but also a shovel, a pickaxe, and stakes. When they arrived at a city, they could construct a fortified camp, complete with ditches and palisades, in a matter of hours. For a prolonged siege, this camp became a city in its own right. The most famous example of Roman siegecraft is Julius Caesar's siege of Alesia in 52 BC. Trapping the Gallic leader Vercingetorix and his 80,000 warriors inside the fortress, Caesar faced a dilemma. He knew a massive Gallic relief army was on its way. So he built 2 lines of fortifications. The first, an 11-mile wall called a contravallation, faced inwards to keep Vercingetorix trapped. The second, a 13-mile wall called a circumvallation, faced outwards to keep the relief army at bay. It was a masterpiece of military engineering, complete with trenches, watchtowers, hidden pits with sharpened stakes, and fields of iron caltrops. When the relief army of over 100,000 Gauls finally arrived, Caesar was caught in the middle, fighting a war on 2 fronts. But his fortifications held. He defeated both the army inside and the army outside, securing Gaul for Rome and cementing his own legend. Beyond brute force and clever engineering, successful sieges often involved a heavy dose of subterfuge and treachery. Spies would try to find disgruntled citizens willing to open a gate for a price. Sappers, or miners, would dig tunnels under the walls, hoping to collapse a section from below. This was a dark, terrifying, and dangerous job, as defenders would often dig counter-tunnels, leading to brutal underground combat. Sometimes the tactics were just plain clever. In the siege of the pirate city of Side, the Roman general Publius Servilius, realizing he couldn't breach the walls, had his men divert a nearby river. They then mixed the water with a large quantity of a local herb known to cause severe intestinal distress. They redirected the tainted river back into the city's water supply. Within days, the entire city was incapacitated by dysentery, and the gates were thrown open without another fight. The age of these ancient siege masters eventually came to an end. The fall of the Western Roman Empire led to a period where the resources and centralized knowledge needed to build such complex machines were largely lost in Europe. Fortifications once again gained the upper hand for a time. But the principles discovered by the Assyrians, perfected by the Greeks, and standardized by the Romans never truly vanished. They were the foundation upon which all future siege warfare was built, right up until the day a new sound echoed across the battlefield, the thunder of cannons, which would render even the mightiest stone walls obsolete. The story of ancient sieges is a dramatic tale of human ingenuity against human determination. It reminds us that for every seemingly immovable obstacle, there is a mind plotting a way to overcome it, to dig under it, to go around it, or to simply smash it to pieces. Thank you for joining us on this journey back in time. If you found this look at ancient military genius as fascinating as we do, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history. Let us know in the comments which ancient siege you find most impressive. Thanks for watching.